Alright, let's analyze the poem A Character by William Wordsworth. Firstly, let's take a preliminary look at the title, A Character. This could be a usually fictional persona, or perhaps this could refer to a person's character, their moral constitution. Now let's break down the poem going by each complete sentence or idea. I marvel how nature could ever find space for so many strange contrasts in one human face. In other words, humanity has a vast spectrum of emotion and thought. Note that nature is personified here, and the human face becomes a symbol of identity, as we'll see in the rest of the poem. There's thought and no thought, and there's paleness and bloom, and bustle and sluggishness, pleasure and gloom. There's weakness and strength, both redundant and vain. Here we see examples of these spectrums. Such strength as, if ever affliction and pain could pierce through a temper that's soft to disease, would be rational peace, a philosopher's ease. So if you have a temper, another word for composure, that's weak against external forces, or soft to disease, it can obviously be pierced or overwhelmed by these forces, such as affliction and pain. So that if is always true. Such strength refers back to the strength that's redundant and vain, or excessive and self-centered. So all in all, our strength can provide peace and calm when bad things inevitably overwhelm us. There's indifference alike when he fails or succeeds, and attention full 10 times as much as their needs. So he acts as if he doesn't care if he fails or succeeds, and yet he pays far too much attention to whether or not he fails or succeeds. Pride where there's no envy, there's so much of joy, and mildness and spirit both forward and coy. So there's a shift here away from spectrums to all this guy's positive traits. But notice there's still contradiction here. His spirit is both forward or blunt and coy or shy. There's freedom and sometimes a diffident stare of shame scarcely seeming to know that she's there. Diffident is lacking self-confidence, and the she is referring back to freedom. So in other words, man has freedom, but sometimes acts unaware of this fact. The face wearing a stare of shame and lacking confidence. Here we have a shift back to the negative traits. There's virtue, the title it surely may claim, yet wants heaven knows what to be worthy the name. In other words, many call themselves virtuous when no one is truly worthy of a title suggesting perfection, given humanity is obviously imperfect and will never be without vices. This picture from nature may seem to depart, yet the man would at once run away with your heart. To depart is referring to this picture of man going downhill with the previous lines of the poem, and goes into another shift, as the speaker notes how we can still fall in love with each other, despite how flawed and contradictory we are. And I for 5 centuries right gladly would be such an odd, such a kind, happy creature as he. In other words, the speaker is happy to be human. Note that there's a consistent AABB rhyme scheme and a consistent rhythm throughout. It provides emphasis and lightens the tone and the mood. So going back to the title, A Character, the literal meaning would be referring to the description of one man, but the figurative meaning would be a portrait of humanity as a whole. In this poem, the speaker shows an uplifting, light-hearted, reflective tone. Which leads us to the theme. Humanity is wonderful, despite and because of its web of contradiction and contrast. This focus on the character and behavior of humanity ties in well with the field of engineering, as one must always keep the human in mind when designing something new. This empathy with others is critical to coming up with and designing solutions that can actually meet people's needs, be it a house, a car, a tool, a computer, or even a video game. The contradictory nature of humanity is also important, as the passing whims and fleeting desires of people make demand for a product not always reliable, and the engineer must keep this challenge in mind when trying to be successful financially. There's a lot to be learned from A Character by William Wordsworth.